So my name is Michael Neville. I'm the General Manager of Farmland and Ecosystems for Kilter Rural. We own and manage water. We own irrigation assets on behalf of our investors and manage them. We're irrigating crops that are high value crops. So processing tomatoes, cotton, high value orchards, and we have irrigated cereals, winter cereals that we irrigate during the winter. Anything that's high value. So that's why we've got water. In our industry, we have a standard benchmark, which is megalitres of water per hectare, and that reverts back to a crop. So when we first look at a crop, we say, well, how much water do you think we have to use to get that crop to the end point? We have currently about 11,000 kilometres of tape in the ground, and it waters the crop directly to the root systems. So compared to a gravity irrigation system, that saves about 30% of the water because we're not exposing that water to the outside, to the sun, and lose it via evaporation. And we're putting all our inputs, all our nutrient inputs are also going straight to the root systems. So that's been a valuable input for us. And our biggest crop, our biggest irrigated crop is processing tomatoes. That gives a return of around $450 per megalitre of water profit. And that's our benchmark. But if we go and look into the almond industry, for example, their benchmark's a lot higher. So we're competing for water with them, and that's the thing. And so's the rice industry. And the cotton industry are all competing for water, to get that gross margin per megalitre of water. What do we need to do to get access to water? Most of our investors, we invest on their behalf in areas where there's water that is delivered to farm gate. So in northern Victoria, we look to the Goulburn Murray water system, which is one of the best water systems in Australia, that delivers water from the dam system in the Snowy Mountains, and it comes through the river system and then through the lake system up at our Lake Boga farms, and then delivers to farm gate. So we have a lot of channels and everything's right there to farm gate. And then once it gets to our farm gate, the GMW, who own the water to that point, then we take ownership of that water at that point. And so we have a minimal distance from the main channel systems back to our pump sheds, and then we put it directly out into the crops that we're watering. GMW is Goulburn Murray Water. It's a water corporation, but it's state owned. It's owned by the government. It makes sure that everybody in the state is using water properly, is getting billed the correct amount, because they have meters at every farm gate or every enterprise gate where we are. That's all sent back to Tatura, and then we get bills for water delivery, because we've still got to pay for our share of that water, of how it gets to us. It's a very complex system, but Australia has one of the best systems in the world. So there's entitlements. Water entitlements carry the same value and legal status as an entitlement for land. So currently for our Lake Boga aggregation, the property has access to 16 gigalitres of water. And then that water is allocated to us depending on the year and what's in the dam. So the farm managers on our farms ring GMW and they order water. And GMW put water in the system to head down the channel, so it's going so we can get it delivered to farm gate. So we put that water in, and then we use that water, and then we order water again for the next use. So it's a very tricky situation, because once you've ordered water, be ready to take it, because it's coming to you. It's about efficient water use. So once upon a time, we just used to, water had no value because it was tied to the land. So people just used to flood irrigation bays out with water to grow feed or to do whatever, but there was no payment. So there was nobody had to stand up and be responsible for the water they used. And then once they introduced the system and they split water entitlement from the land, and also then it became a business, and then you have to deal with other people. You can sell your water, if you own entitlement, you can sell your water to the almonds, who have got total returns of around $36,000 a hectare, as opposed to our tomatoes that have got 14,000. And we could stop growing tomatoes and sell our water to the almonds. So if there's a lot of water in the system, that allocation price is low. And at the moment, it's roughly around $180 to $220. And that goes up depending on demand. when there's water's low and you're getting allocations down to 30 and 40% because the dam levels are dropping and there hasn't been any rainfall into the catchment, you might be paying $1,000 per megalitre. So you'd be crazy not to think about selling that or utilising that in another system. So you have to think long term. So it's all about getting value for water and the most efficient water use that you can find. Yeah, so that's based on seasonal conditions, water price goes up and down. So the seasonal conditions is, has it rained and is there water flowing into the catchments? So I think at the end of the day, you have to judge that. And in our business, we sit down in March before the summer and winter cropping season and say, rightio, how much water's in the catchment? What do we look for in the rainfall forecasts that go forward, and say, what's it going to look like for winter, spring? Is there going to be a lot of water coming into the catchment? Has the Bureau of Meteorology, and we rely on their information quite a lot, to look forward and say, is it going to be a dry spring? Is it going to be a dry winter? And if so, we'll take off those crops that are not water efficient. And we have to look about 10 to 12 months forward to see what we think the weather forecasts and the Bureau are leading towards in the future. So we can make those decisions now and not get caught with our pants down halfway through the season when we haven't got enough water. I think the challenges that we've got is water availability, what's in the catchments. We've got companies now that are demanding Australian grown product. So I think we've got markets. I think one of the challenges is labour in our industries, and that's always a challenge. But I think the biggest challenge is just preempting how much water is going to be in the system and what you can and can't do, because that's what dictates how you behave on your farms, is to how much water is available. So how do we work with the governments to get extra water? So there's an entitlement system. Not everybody could use the water that they wanted to like they did before, because we're putting the environment at risk. So now the environment is the biggest water holder. The environmental water holder for the federal government is the biggest water holder. And that's to do environmental watering and go down to the Murray and go down to South Australia and just do a lot of environmental watering in the system. So they now own a third of the water. So that makes the pool less again for the water users. So then it becomes about doing what you're growing and looking at the dollar per megalitre of the returns that you get for the water. So if you look at the water system, then you say, how can I get more? You really can't get more unless government bodies, state government bodies, release it into the actual consumptive pool, and then you can bid for it in that system. So it's a tender system. So you put in your bid and you're either successful or you're not, if there is extra water available. And that's part of the scheme. The scheme is actually to make sure that everybody gets clear access and fair access to the water. I can't go and bully somebody and get the water in preference with somebody else. It's got to be made by a proper service. So there's quite a lot of people involved, water brokers and government decision makers and ministers in states, because states still are controlling the water system. And the federal government really points everybody in the direction, but they can't make any decisions for them. The local government, they tend to look after the assets around the water systems and really don't have a big part to play, but they might have allocation of water that they can put back into the system and sell, and it goes back to the market. So the whole system is run by a market system. So nobody gets extra water by just somebody saying, well, you can have my water. You actually bid for it, and it's a market system, and it becomes, it's tradable. It's like the stock exchange. Every megalitre of water is tradable, whether it's owned by the state governments, the local governments, or the federal governments. So we've got an aggregation in the Lake Boga Swan Hill district. We've got another aggregation that we're just starting for the Australian Farmlands Fund. And both properties have a relationship with all the local Indigenous communities. So in some cases, we've got some of the groups, Bata around Kerrang, come and work on our lands just to do environmental works. So we have a relationship with them now. It's the same around Kigari, but we've only just started there, so we haven't had a big commitment, but we talk to them, yes. And for instance, 50% of our holding in the Future Farming Landscape aggregation, which is owned by Vic Super, we're going to be doing environmental waterings in those areas. And we just had those discussions with the local authorities the other day and planning on how we can do that. But we've also got a water fund that Kilda have got, the Balanced Water Fund, which is in conjunction with the Nature Conservatory. It has a commitment to do environmental water holdings within that fund every year. So if it's really wet, that water can go to the environment. If it's really dry, it can go to the farmers. So it's about balancing out the seasonal conditions. I'm fourth generation farmer. My family have been farming in Australia since day dot in South Australia, and been farming all my life. And only really started in water in 2013, and it took me a while to get my head around it. But the simple part of water is it's just another input. It's like fertilizer, it's like anything. You just add it into your gross margins and then all the costs associated with it. But one thing I learned very quickly was that we had to go for high value. And I looked at the land and I thought, there's some challenges there in the land, but that's okay. We've got really good assets, we've got good water, and we've got plenty of sunshine. Now that's a recipe for agriculture. So now we just got to go and find out what we have to grow. And the big important part for me is I won't grow something unless I've got a market for it. And at the end of the day, what we're trying to do here is it's for the person who's got their money in the superannuation fund. We're trying to give them a profit on that at the end of our project. And agricultural projects are naturally longer than anything in the stock market, or because it's not, excuse the pun, but it's not liquid. You just can't sell it overnight. There's a process to go. So most of the funds that I like working for are sort of 15 to 20 year funds, and then some are up to 30. So you've got a long time to develop these systems and make them work. For water to work well and be a fair system for all, people have to see that we're not doing anything special or receiving favours as opposed to any other grower in the industry. But we're doing it by the rules, and everybody's got to play by the rules. So all players in this game, be active in it. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of planning. There's a lot of thinking. This is you're just not a farmer here. You're planning, and the system, remember the system includes a whole lot of things, but at the center of the system is the soil. So without the soil, our good soils, you cannot make this system work. You can have all the water in the world. So you have to think about improving the system, but start from the soil. So have fun with the game, learn to understand water, learn to understand agriculture. It's a great industry. There's some great people in it, and it's been around for a long time, and it's going to be around for a lot longer. So enjoy the game, and I wish you all the best.